Hello, and welcome to Rob from the Internet Talks About Beer, a show where we discuss different styles of beer, beer history, beer flavor profiles. We give shout outs to breweries we think make exceptional beer, and we talk about whatever in the hell else comes to mind during the course of our conversation. I'm Rob from the Internet. Let's talk about beer. All right, joining me today is a recently acquired Twitter friend called Scott Howard. Scott, if you would tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got into craft beer, and what you do when you're not talking about craft beer.
Hey Rob. Well, I unfortunately spend entirely too much time talking about nerdy tech things and all that kind of goodness, but it relates to how I've landed in the craft beer industry, and big part of I'm hoping we can explore a bit is talk a bit about craft beer as a business, because that's kind of my angle. I kind of run around, and beer is my business is kind of one of the taglines I've been working with on Twitter and trying to create content around. So I'm pretty excited about the craft brewing industry, and a lot of that came from I really like craft beer.
I
So
mean,
there's this double motivation of like, what would I like to do with my day most of the day instead of sending emails and doing Zoom calls? Well, I'd like to drink craft beer. So if I can land myself and do more work in the craft beer industry, well, it's a sneaky added benefit.
yeah, most
And
definitely.
yeah, so the kind of the angle that we've come at this with is running a pretty wild experiment from a startup perspective. So kind of my world is tech startups and trying to figure out how to make these crazy internet things work. And a lot of that has evolved into, I'm sure what's kind of come out, especially as a content creator yourself, is the NFTs, Web3, crypto, all that kind of world, and how does that intersect with the real world where we live and drink beer? And the kind of one of the running jokes I had when doing a bunch of these crypto conferences and talking about, well, how does this technology actually work and what does it do? I would joke about beer coin.
Beer coin, yes.
I'm like, one day a brewery is going to come out with beer coin. It's going to be like a loyalty point. You're going to go to the brew pub. You're going to be able to cash in your brew coins for beer. And there's going to be a pegging between the amount of beer and brewing. And of course, inevitably, I ran into a company that was actually doing
Nice.
that. Called Kraft. They're out of London, England. They have German founder who landed himself in London, England, was living there, and retirement business was building at first just a craft brewery. So took out, like, I think it's like an abandoned factory in the East End of London, put a brewery into it, expanded that out into a beer garden, and this thing became like the most hottest spot in England for months. And it was like helped revitalize this whole neighborhood, because the East End of London is not the nicest part of London. And all of a sudden, cafes started popping up. They put a whole kind of farmers market during the daylight hours in the beer garden, and it floated in the beer garden. Everyone loved the beer. It was like this, 1472-ish family recipe from like the countryside outside of Munich where he grew up, where he had a family friend who owned this brewery. Entirely family controlled, limited stock. Only way to get this very specific brew was like to go to this farm outside of Munich
Cool.
and like buy it directly from the brewer. And so he worked out like, I won't do exactly the same, but let me get as close as I can without completely copying and pasting this thing. Got the recipe and started brewing it, and everyone loves it. And I got the chance to have it before COVID shut down the world and all this kind of good stuff. And it was amazing brew. But the son was a tech guy like me.
Nice.
And so they implemented an app, built a coin around it. And the most interesting thing that I found, and kind of like, I've seen some of your previous issues where you talk about, beer history. Beer is one of the most stable commodities in the history of humans.
Oh yeah, because everybody loves beer.
How do you think those pyramids got built in Egypt?
That's right.
They weren't
They weren't giving them good food. They were giving them beer.
Bingo. And so pretty much throughout history, as it's kind of been reasonably well studied, 15 minutes of human labor, 1 pint of beer.
I mean, I could get behind that kind of pay scale.
You think like I think. Hmm. So how many hours a day do I have to work to really? Well, it only sounds about 2 hours or so. I'm
That's
good.
right.
And so it's really held steadily. And if you kind of look at even today across markets, so if you're in a small town, beer might be $4, $5, $6, typically $6 if we're both in Ontario. $6 beer would be like, that's a pretty good price beer if I can get a pint for $6, which would be reflective of, oh, I'm working relatively cheaper because I don't live in the downtown core. You live in the downtown core, well, that could be an $8, $12 type beer. You live in downtown London, England, well, it's definitely a $12 beer.
Yep.
But it lines up with what would the typical average wage of that region be? Well, you divide that by 4, and that's about $12. And it lands, and all this, it holds water, that kind of calculation. There's only a few things else in human history that kind of hold this kind of steady inflation resistant model of like, no, 15 minutes of work will get you a pint of beer or a loaf of bread, you pick.
I mean, some pints of beer are like a loaf of bread, so
Also true. So definitely a correlation between those two peggings of like, you can eat it or you can drink it. Either way, you get your calories. We don't really care because that'll keep you working.
that's right.
And so looking at that, it became really interesting. And as I maybe alluded to, like I'm a crypto Bitcoin guy, so kind of thinking about how do you get value for your money? How do you store value? There's this nice little like, well, what's held itself? Well, beer does. And the kind of whole story of Craft House and how that kind of played out and revitalized the neighborhood, turned this older piece of property that was essentially derelict and probably filled with junkies and all that kind of stuff before they moved in, turned it this huge, vibrant piece of their community, lifted the economic value of the entire neighborhood, so everybody with a flat nearby was real happy.
Right.
Maybe the noise.
Yeah, most definitely. Gentrification is always good for the homeowners.
Yes. And it brought life in the neighborhood and all that kind of stuff. And so the study that we've kind of been looking at and driving into is craft breweries, and craft brewers in particular can be the lifeblood of a local economy. And it can be a local economy here in downtown Toronto. It just happens to be a neighborhood versus the town, which
Right.
is like you probably have a handful, half a dozen brewers in Brampton and Brantford that are
Brantford,
like,
yes, yeah.
yeah,
I count myself lucky. Within 30 or so minutes of me, there's probably about a dozen craft breweries.
bingo. And they make for a better life.
Yes.
Even if you're not into beer, they make for a better. Look, well, where are we going to go and hang out? That's not like the chain restaurant.
Yep.
It's the brewery, because it's a much more profitable business than restaurants. Attaching your restaurant to your brewery makes for a much better restaurant, not the other way around, because it is the most sustainable small local business on earth. There's one other one they're kind of correlated, but I won't go down that rabbit hole. They walked out. They don't take as much storefront up on that particular business.
Gotcha. Yes,
it's a bit of a rover. So we kind of looked at craft breweries being this interesting microcosm of what it means to be a business, because they have a supply chain. They're sourcing barley, hops, capital equipment in terms of kilns, brewing material, all the stuff that you need to go make beer. That makes for a pretty interesting little supply chain that they have on the backside of that business.
Yep.
Then they're probably the biggest local manufacturer in a lot of cases, because they're manufacturing the beer through their plant, their process to do that. And then they got to package that beer into cans and bottles and kegs. Then they got a pretty big distribution business. We got to get it out to the bars and pubs and restaurants. We got to get it to the store. We got to get it to any other distribution we have. And then they'll typically have the front of the house brew pub,
right,
restaurant, bottle shop, whatever they're going to do with their own retail. And that is like a really cash intensive business. Good news. You have to be really drunk to not make money at it. you gotta be really dicking into the supply to have that not turn a reasonable profit.
Right.
so these guys become very instrumental pieces of that local economy. Whether we're talking about 6 square blocks in downtown Toronto, or we're talking about the whole town, it becomes a focal point because it's going to employ 3 or 4 people at least. You're buying materials off of people. You're putting the brewer out to the stores. It's getting sold. It's at the it's the number one profit driver of any restaurant or bar is obviously the alcohol sales. It's hugely important, and they're underbanked because bankers don't want to figure anything out.
Right.
Most breweries are like, so Rob, tell me about your house. Because that's what we're going to secure the loan on that you're going to go buy the kiln with.
Right.
Not, does your brewery make any money? Is it good? After you got 3 years of financial history and stuff like that, it starts to change and evolve, but it's almost always entirely based on the assets of the business, a little bit related to your cash flow, but not very much. And can you personally guarantee these loans, which limit their growth?
Yep.
In that, there's reasons to grow and there's reasons not to grow. The core of like being a good small business owner is like having the option. Do I want to go compete with Anheuser-Busch, or do I just want to have a great 5,000 hectoliter brewery that can make me a very comfortable living, employ 5-10 people, be a core piece of my community, and I can hand the keys to my kids if I want.
Right.
Totally, or I got a hobby. We kind of typically think about like that 5,000 hectoliter brewer, which is the typical craft brewer that you can find on a shelf somewhere. That's is that a $5, $6, $7 million business? It should be able to turn over about $1 million of profit. That's a good business.
Yep.
Only way that gets financed: here's a line of credit, here's your small business loan. You want anything more than maybe we'll capitalize your major pieces of capital equipment and stuff like that. Get some leases on it, and that kind of contains where those guys can grow, because when you kind of hit that 10,000 hectoliter zone, the game starts to change, because you got a lot more product you got to move.
Yep.
So as us Ontarians know, you got to deal with the devil called the LCBO in the beer store, and that's got its own economics and its own dynamics.
Yes.
And it's a lot of geography. It's a big freaking province.
It is a surprisingly large province. Yes.
For those on the internet out there not aware of Ontario, it's probably it's top 20 biggest geographies on the planet.
Yeah, it's huge.
Competition's countries, not other places.
But
we as big as those other countries.
But to be fair, 90% of the population lives within 2 hours of the U.S. border. So I mean, it's a big province, but it's not very full.
Not very full. You got a lot of empty space, but it means you got a lot of empty space to cover when you're moving stuff around. So it becomes this interesting growth dynamic where these guys got caught. And one of the things that we've learned through that is the funding process. How do you grow? How do you scale in that? It's pretty pernicious. And it's not like that anyone's trying to be nasty. It's just it's how money works. And they get stuck in this spot where it's like you start taking on more and more growth capital. That growth capital essentially locks you into like, you no longer have any choice. You're going to be bought by Anheuser-Busch.
Yeah.
Because behind the money is Anheuser-Busch. Replace Anheuser-Busch with 4 or 5 other logos.
Right. Yeah.
But there's a reason why all your favorite craft beers, when they grow, get bought by
the big boys.
Molson,
yeah.
Molson, Labatt's, Anheuser-Busch, InBev, the big groups. And a big piece of it is because of the way their capital gets structured. Ace Hill's on that path here in Ontario. They're getting big. They're growing well. They might be able to engineer their way out of that because they have some supplementary businesses called cannabis and things like that that could keep them out of the bailiwick of ending up like Steam Whistle or anybody else, where it's like you get to that 50,000, 100,000 zone, you're getting bought.
Yep.
And it's getting bought because the capital you need to run that business is going to be dictated of like, do I really want to roll out all this infrastructure? Do I want to buy all those trucks? Can I build a plant that big? Or can I take this really juicy premium?
Right. Yeah. No. and that's a decision a lot of mid-sized brewers have to make. You know,
Yeah.
do you stagnate your size and continue to do what you want, or do you take the buyout from the big boys and then go do something else you want?
Yeah. Or you work there and you hang out and you do the brand ambassador thing for a few
Yeah,
years until your check clear.
yeah. Until all the checks are in the bank, right? I get it.
Yeah. So we've been working through processes of how can we help those growing breweries kind of finance themselves, understand their growth, get more profit. So kind of get to a spot where it's like, do you want to take the more profit and build a bigger cottage, or do you want to take that profit and double your footprint?
Right,
You pick. But the way that we're structuring the numbers don't dictate like, well, thou shalt grow. You can grow profit, you can grow top line. I don't care. So what we're doing is we're financing growth. So we're essentially tying using data and all the geeky stuff that I can nerd out about all day, but that's what I do all day. Let's talk about beer. Tying it to the beer, going like, how well is this product going to sell at the LCBO? So Gateway City, North Bay guys, small 2.5 to 5,000 hectoliter brewery, doing the typical pattern of like, how do we grow our way into having a decent amount of shelf space at the LCBO
right,
without killing ourselves,
right.
Or pissing them off so they dump us and kill us. And it's an interesting process of going like, well, okay, if I can get your data, I can start to predict how well that product's going to sell. I'll loan against the bet that you can sell that product in 30 days versus 45 days. The bank's only interested, like, what did you do the last 90 days?
Right.
Well, that has nothing to do with how I'm going to grow. We want a forward look. So it's kind of taken this whole financial technology stuff. So we've done this stuff in the internet space where it's like, if you got an e-commerce store or a software as a service product, you can very easily predict when you have all the right data to go, $1 put into Facebook advertising will translate into $7 of sales predictably over the next 30 days. And off that, the gross margin is $6.
Right.
So we'll loan you up to $6. So you can buy $7 of advertising and get $49 of revenue.
Right.
Great way to grow. You obviously don't want to spend $6 on the whole growth, but the lender gets their piece of that pie. Essentially, what they're doing is they're selling you new revenue.
Yep.
When your supply chain and your flow through model is predictable enough, of which there's not a lot of reasons why I can't tell you how liquid that beer market's going to be.
I mean, it is a liquid to begin with, so.
And the beauty of the security. This is my running nerd finance joke. Is like, I'm collateralized against the most liquid asset on earth, and if anything goes wrong, congratulations, I'm throwing
you. Awesome. So
all my investors are invited to the party.
So you threw up Gateway City. Is that one of the beers you're going to drink on the show today?
This could be my rye pale ale, the 137 pale ale from Gateway City Brewery up in North Bay, as I said. It is a pretty standard 5.1, so not too exciting. The other one I had in reserve out of kind of patriotic fever and supporting Sava Ukraine. I got the Shevchenko Dunkel, and this is I haven't had this one in a while. I've been drinking. This has been my steady one, mostly because I'm too busy with the guys right now, and I like the beer a lot, and I like the rye pale ale.
Nice,
but which is a bit of a new one. This is the first time. Probably the Gateway is the first time I had the rye pale ale. Really kind of enjoy it.
Rye is an interesting grain.
The IPAs, and I'm like, I got to do a rye and try it on. I really like it.
Yeah, rye is an interesting grain for beers. It adds a nice robustness, and it adds a bit of spiciness to the flavor profile, which is great. Well, I am going to be having Bandit Brewery's Dolce Tiramisu pastry stout. So it's sweet, it's chocolatey, it's got a little bit of coffee, it's got a little bit of cream in there, and it comes in at a mild 9.5%. It says on the bottle to share with a friend, but I don't have any friends with me, so I'm just going to drink it my damn self.
I'll crack my Dunkel. I want to hit the Dunkel and have a Ukraine day.
So I
walked right by
Go ahead.
I walked by right by the Russian Imperial Stout. I just boycotted that. And no offense to the guys at Wellington, they make a nice beer. That's an unfortunate brand, but
Well, yeah, I
at this
mean,
particular,
right now, anything with the word Russian in it is taking a little bit of a beating. Um, but the Russian Imperial Stout style is still one of my favorite styles. You can call it whatever
yes,
you can change it and call it like Royal Imperial Stout if you don't like the Russian word. Um,
yeah,
kind of like in the States when what was it back in the '90s when there was no longer French fries, they were Freedom fries.
freedom fries.
That's right. So the same thing. You can call it a Royal Imperial Stout, and just do that. Yeah, I didn't know you were a tech person when you agreed to be on the show. That's kind of cool. I'm also a tech person. Before I moved to Canada, I was chief information officer for a regionally sized medical corporation in the United States. Yeah, so I know all about tech. I came up through the tech world. Started off as a PC tech, worked my way all the way to the top, and then I moved to Canada. I retired, and after 6 months, my wife said, "You can't be retired anymore. You need to go find a job." So I'm working in tech again. I'm actually working for a cannabis company in the Kitchener area, doing tech work for them, which is nice because I'm no longer the person who's in charge of everything. So at the end of the day, I turn off my computer, I go home, and I forget about work. I just go have beer.
That is it is the beauty of the retirement
That's
gig.
right. That's right. Yeah,
I don't think I'll ever be very successful at it. Every time my friends go, well, that must have worked out. You got to keep working. I'm like, oh yeah,
yeah.
no, I got nothing else that I'm going to do with myself other than drink some beer. But I can drink. Luckily I can drink beer while I
Yeah.
work.
Well,
It's
well, luckily,
beautiful.
I have other hobbies as well. So, I brew beer and I drink beer and I talk about beer and I talk to other people about beer and I like to go to breweries. So, I've got other hobbies. It's just that, my wife said I can't be retired until she wants to retire and she doesn't want to retire yet. So, because it's not,
Gotcha.
it's not fair that I could be sitting at home doing whatever in the hell I want if she's still sitting at work. And I'm like, well, just retire. But, she doesn't want to retire yet. So, because she likes her job and she likes the people she worked with. So fair enough. I went and got a job that helps pay for more toys and brewing and beer for me.
So how big do a brew setup do you have? So you kind of converted the garage or the backyard shed into the brewmaster, or what do you
No,
got
no, I
going
didn't convert anything. When we bought this house, it didn't have a garage. We put a 50-foot deep by 2.5 car wide garage on it, and the back third of that garage is my brewing space. Um, I'm
on?
currently
Nice.
waiting for my new brew system to come. I have a custom made skid mounted 1 barrel system coming from a manufacturer. It's being built. Well, let's see, probably right now because they are several hours difference. It's being made by a Chinese company for me. Um, and yeah, so I've got a new skid mounted 1 barrel system coming. It's supposed to be here the middle or so of next month, which will be great. Moving up from doing 10 and 15 gallon batches to doing 31 gallon batches. So, that's
Good.
160 liters for you metric folks. Yeah, it's nice. It's a fair amount of beer. The system is all teched out. It's got a touch screen. It's got Wi-Fi, so I can monitor it from my phone. It's got the whole bit. It's a big boy system. It's not one of your little systems that you buy, where it's like, oh, I can do 15 gallons and it's all in one vessel. No, this is a 3 vessel system. It's got all the pumps and it's got 4 different heating elements and it's got a rake in it to do the grain, for the mashing of the grain. I don't have to stand up there with a paddle and do it myself. It's got a built-in raking system. So yeah, clean in place, the whole bit. I When I moved to Canada originally, I was going to open a brewery, and then my wife and I got to talking about it and looked at all the regulations and all the bullshit that's required in Ontario to open a brewery. And she said, "Well, how about we just have a kick-ass home brewery and we go on vacations and stuff rather than spending all this money opening a brewery and not having vacations for the next 5 to 10 years." And I thought it was a pretty good idea. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, no, it's as I've obviously been learning lots and lots more about the real details of building like at multiple
Yeah.
sizes. It's an intense business. It's a fun. I don't hear anybody complaining about it because it's a pretty fun business at the end of the day. Like most brewers are pretty happy crew I like the business. It's pretty fun. Yeah, COVID was a bit stressful, but we made it through, and most of the guys made it through. The guy, as long as you weren't too exposed to the restaurants, you were
Right.
doing fine.
Yeah,
Sold enough cans to survive.
brewing beer is one of those vocations that if you love it, it's not a job. It's still something you love to do. Um, People think that people that brew beer are these magical wizards when actually we spend 90% of our time cleaning, and like 10% of our time actually doing the brewing part of things. But when you make a great beer and you taste it after you've put in the labor, you taste it and you're like, yeah, this is a great beer. It's all worth it. It doesn't matter how much of a pain in the ass that beer was to make or anything. That's what it's all about. And the craft brewers that I've met through doing my show and just through traveling around to different breweries, they all have that same thing in common, where they love what they do and they wouldn't do it if they didn't love it. And you can tell from the products that they make. I mean, if you don't love what you do, your products are going to show that. They're going to be mediocre at best, and you're not going to have the sales, and you're not going to have the customer base. But if you really put your heart and soul into something and you make the best you can, people are going to recognize that. And you're going to build up a loyal following, and you're going to have people who want your product. I mean, I order stuff from from all over the province, because I've tasted it and I'm like, these people know how to make beer. They love what they do. Like Lake of the Woods, make fantastic beer. They're
Yeah,
out in the middle of fucking nowhere. They make fantastic
exactly.
beer. So guess who I order beer from when I hear they have a special release coming out, I order some. Other breweries like just down the road from me in Scotland, Ontario, is Flux Brewing, and they make fantastic beer. They're only a couple of years old, but they make some really fantastic beer. They have a fantastic facility. It's on a farm, so you go out on their patio and you overlook like a big irrigation pond that overlooks that, and then goes on to a big field. I mean, it's fantastic, and they're super friendly and they love what they do, and you can tell by the beer. I mean, you know it might not be the absolute best version of any given style that's out there for the style that they're making, but it's their spin on it, and it's good stuff.
Yep. No, it's always always what I'm looking for is just a different way of bringing a Dunkel to life, bringing a Rye to life, whatever it is, because it's there's 100 ways you could pull it
Yep.
off. There's only one macro way. There's a standard kind of path to get there. There's only so many 100 little deviations you can make. So those 100 little deviations are what makes it entertaining and enjoyable to do. And I love visiting
Oh yeah,
breweries,
yeah. You know,
especially if you get the brewmaster and get them to give you the hows, the whys, the wheres, and how like you always see how passionate they are about it, even if you're like, oh, I don't know exactly how that works, but he sounds like he's really excited about it. It's
yeah,
awesome.
it's funny. Like I love touring breweries. I have toured. I can't tell you how many breweries, and a lot of my friends are like, well, it's all basically the same equipment. It is, but you listen to the story from the brewmasters of how the brewery came to be and what their process is, and everybody's story is a little different, and that's what you go through the brewery tours for. It's not to see their equipment. I mean, okay, it might be to see how cool their equipment looks like, what do they have for equipment, but it's not really for the equipment. It's for the story of the brewery. And you get that when you take the tour. People will tell you the story of the brewery. Oh, this is how we started. This is what our philosophy is. This is what we believe. This is what we want to do. This is the products that we want to make, things like that. And you don't get that just from buying it in the LCBO or buying it at your local liquor store. You only get that when you go to a brewery and you take the tour and you listen, and you ask questions and you talk to them. Because, I have found that breweries, the brewers, the workers, the counter staff, anybody at a brewery who you want to, if you start talking to them and you show a genuine interest, they'll talk to you all day long, because anybody who works in that business loves that business.
Oh, yeah, that's been universally my experience too. Like one of my favorite stories is I was at Parsons, which is a bit become a relatively pretty big
They
brewery
make
in
good
Prince
beer.
Edward County here in Montclair. And like the Devils were, the Devils series is just like an unbelievable set of stouts. Like it's just off the charts good. And I think that they were making one of the the devil's child or the devil's right hand or which one of the really strong stouts. And there was some mistake that one of the guys made, and it put the batch entirely off. Took it off recipe, screwed it all up. So the biggest problem that they had off of that was like, oh, well, we're not going to bottle it the way we would bottle that product. We're going to can it, and because it was a decent beer. Called the name of the beer is Clusterfuck.
Yep.
It's like, oh, it's a
That's right.
Clusterfuck. And so they got put a funny name on it, get a little package, so they have this like one-off batch of how many liters of Clusterfuck. It's tasty. We got that in the fridge, and it's fun to drink, and it's light, but it's not as good as the Devil's Right Hand,
Right,
but
but it's still
it's
it's still. I mean, yeah, okay. So someone messed up and they deviated too far from the recipe, but in the end, they're still able to make something of it, and it wasn't ruined. I mean, and you know, hopefully the person who made the mistake learned a lesson from
oh yeah, I know there was a lesson there.
it.
Yeah, but it turned out like if you did that at Labatt,
Yeah,
you'd be canned, right?
that would be a
You'd be
resume
all right.
generation event. Yes.
Yeah, it's a good line. I'm gonna borrow that one. That's a good one. And so like they made the best of they turned lemons into lemonade in that case in a quite fun way, and it was like so you get all those little intricate stories of like how the heck did we get here? That was another one I was asking guys about the canning process because obviously at the start of COVID, everyone had to revert to
Yep.
cans. Do you have a canning line? Do you not have a canning line? Okay, the canning line. We got the mobile rented canning line come in. You got to get everybody and your mother come in and help you labor the process of canning the beer. So, the young guy who's we were just sitting on the patio eating hamburgers and drinking the beer, and I'm of course geeking out about the beer and asking questions. Oh man, we just canned it. We were there. I was there for 24 hours straight, pegging down the cans, and
Yep.
we had the other one that we had to go. We had to pick the fruit ourselves because they didn't have the cross border labor that would typically
Yep.
come pick. I think it was a blackberry beer or something like blackberry was what they infused in the beer. Like, well, we couldn't get it, so the farmer said, "You come get it. We'll give it to you for free." So they ran out to the field with like 4 or 5 of the people who work for the brewery, and they're picking
Yep.
blackberries the day. Bring them back, and they made a blackberry batch. So I had one of the I had like a black currant stout or something like that they had made with it. It was really delicious. And but the guys giving me the whole story about, oh man, the canning is almost all this work, and then we had to do this with the blackberry. Getting those stories is like it's all kind of rooted back to that kind of local heart and soul
Yep.
of a community type place where it's like we make our product. There's almost nowhere else you're going to go where the proprietor is like, I made the product you're
Yeah.
consuming.
No, you're right, and like a
The chef, sure, but the chef kind of not
right.
really
Yeah, the
ish.
chef. Well, depending on the restaurant, the chef
Close.
tends to direct the other cooks to make the things. It's his recipes and his style, but he has other people that actually do it for him. But yeah, in breweries, for the most part, the owner tends to be the head brewer, or if he's not the head brewer, he used to be the head brewer, and now he's just the face of the place, and he's passed on that torch. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
one of the few places where you can go and you can sit down and have a beer with the guy who made the beer you're drinking.
yeah. No, it is the thing that I love about the industry. It's just like it's this very local, highly distributed business. So it kind of goes back to like we come at the like so the money that we lend these breweries comes from crypto. So we're not using Bitcoin, but we're using things like Bitcoin. So we're using like the stable coins and all this kind of stuff, and we're delivering that out into the real world so we can get a real yield off it and bring that yield back out into the crypto ecosystem and go like, it's not just internet funny money. This that money went out, helped get beer shipped to market, helped sell that beer. Here's our piece of selling that beer, bring it back out as a yield out to that ecosystem. And it's a really good trade back because one of the whole ethos of being in Web3, the decentralized world is decentralized and like pushing as much control, as much of the economy down to as close to the individual level as
Right.
possible. Craft breweries are a great example of this. It's like you can throw a rock down the main street of every small town, you'll hit a craft brewery.
Pretty much these days, yeah.
But there's a level of like there's a few too many of them, and that'll consolidate and sort itself out. But that's a great problem. I love that problem. It's like, okay, there's 5 craft breweries in this little town. Okay, maybe at some point there'll only be 3,
Yeah.
but that's what the free market will figure out. And the 2 guys that were working at the breweries that aren't going to go down will end up working at the other one and trading information and building a better product. It's fabulous because there's very few things that kind of scale. Restaurants, your dentist. There's not a lot of other like these small businesses that kind of are everywhere, are universal, and kind of make a really interesting piece of a community. And it's like breweries do that really well, and they're like hugely important.
It's funny. I never really thought about the intersection of beer and fintech before, but here you are. You're sitting right on those crossroads of beer and fintech. So that
We think we might be the first because everything else is just like, well, how's this different than my bank? I was like, well, I'm gonna, you're just gonna serve up an API. I'm gonna take the data, I'll translate the data, give you back an underwriting decision inside of 10 minutes. That's how I'm better than a bank.
we might have just lost a bunch of people when you said API because not a whole lot of people.
I was like, I'm going to use it, but I know Ron knows what I'm saying, so I'll use it. So
that's right. That's right. Yeah. So yeah, just think of it this.
It's not an IPA.
If you want to know what an API is, just think of it this way. It's how computers talk to other computers across the internet. That's the easiest way for me to put it for you right now without you having to go Google things and stepping away from this episode.
It's like the Indian Pale Ale was the key to get beer from England all the way to India.
Well, actually, it was the hops that was the key idea of that beer. Awesome. So if you don't mind me asking, what's the name of your company, Scott?
FactorChain.ai.
FactorChain.ai. So I assume if people want to learn more, they could go to FactorChain.ai in a web browser and get some information.
We're on the internet, like Ron. We're there. Rob, sorry, pardon me. But it's like we're out there working on that business. I'm hyper interested in learning about more breweries, not just so I can try and sell you some money to go help you grow. It's because I want to drink your beer. So at Howard Scott J on Twitter is where Rob and I found each other on the internet. It was on Twitter. I hang out there all the time. So please tweet at me beer recommendations, cool breweries to go visit and check out. Always very keen to learn more. Suppliers in the industry very interested to talk to you guys and learn more about how you work with the brewers and what that business looks like. That's also a big interesting part for me right now that I'm
yeah. I mean, and the thing about the beer industry is there's always something more to learn, because just when you think you know everything, somebody's like, hey, check this out, I just made this, or hey, we just discovered this new way to do this, and so it seems to be a never ending rabbit hole of new things to discover, much like the world of non-centralized currencies and fintech. It's an ever-changing landscape.
Yes.
Beer's not as fast of a changing landscape as what you're involved in for the most part, but it's still an ever-changing landscape. So yeah,
it is ever-changing, and it's fun. The learning part is what jazzes me up about both. But when I get tired of learning, I start drinking.
And you know what? When I get tired of anything, I just start drinking. Awesome. Well, we have been talking for about 40 minutes, and this is the part of the show where I say, hey, we've reached the end of the show. So anyone who's watched this, I would appreciate if you liked or subbed to the channel, or maybe just share it with someone who might be interested, someone who could use some help expanding their brewery or getting some financing. Hook up with Scott here. He's a man with the plan. he can help you out, or at least point you in the right direction if you're not a good fit for what he's doing. But chances are he could probably figure out a way to make you a good fit for what he's doing if you've got a profitable business. Um, if you like what I'm doing, leave a like, leave a comment. If you have any questions for me, please leave those in the comment section. If you have questions for Scott, he told you how to get a hold of him on Twitter, or you could leave comments in here, and I will forward them on to him. Um, you know, if you're interested in talking about beer and want to be on the show, hey, I'm always open. No experience necessary. Anybody's welcome. All you got to have is a willingness.
I just said hello on the
That's
internet
right.
and it worked.
All you got to have is the ability to be on camera, drink a beer, and talk about beer, whether you like it or you don't, or what it is you like about a specific beer. Hey, hit me up. We'll talk about it. Other than that, until next time, I'm Rob from the internet. Cheers.
Cheers.